Welcome to today's news on TV9. I'm Ada Show. In today's local news, beneficiaries who fail to answer 3 phone calls and a voicemail from Work and Income will have their welfare payments slashed in half. The drastic measure forms part of the government's crackdown on long-term welfare dependency. But some beneficiaries say they were not informed, while the advocates urge the governments to create jobs rather than punishing the poor. New Zealand's workplace death and injury rates have been labelled unacceptable by Labour Minister Kate Wilkinson. This comes as a report finds that our country's workplace safety record is twice as bad as Australia's and 4 times as bad as Britain's. Christy Jai has more.
An independent task force on workplace health and safety found that New Zealand's record is twice as bad as our neighbour Australia's and 4 times as bad as Britain's. The workplace injury and death toll includes 100 deaths per year, 25,000 work-impacting injuries, and 370 hospitalizable and life-threatening conditions. The task force has a goal of reducing that toll by 25% by 2020, something business groups say bosses are helping to achieve.
We believe there's some really good examples out there of work that's going on. We would, though, support the report's recommendations that more needs to be done. What we'd like to do and what we're trying to do is take those good examples and share those examples with other people so that we can learn from each other.
The task force report says New Zealand's system of fines and penalties lags behind those of other similar countries, so it recommends including health and safety duties for directors being written into the law and criminal charges for breaches. Julian Hughes says it's important to have a level playing field on the safety issue.
What we want is all businesses putting safety at the front of their business, making it an important part of what they do and not competing on safety. We want them to they can compete on other things, but we don't want them to compete on safety standards. So if that means the law needs to be tougher, if it means that the law needs to be regulated in a more in a fairer way or in a more robust way, then the Forum would support that.
The task force is expected to make recommendations to the government by April next year. The government says it's already taking action across a range of fronts to ensure better results are achieved, including a boost to workplace health and safety funding by $37 million in this year's budget. Christy Zhao, 9 News.
Australia and New Zealand will now share information about the country's most wanted criminals. The agreements will be signed between the 2 nations later this year. Australian Home Affairs Minister Jason Clare say it's about helping each other stop offenders. Research has found that girls from single-sex schools are more likely to have higher-paying jobs than girls from co-ed schools, as they are more competitive. They're less likely to become the victims of New Zealand's gender pay gap. Amy Fong reports.
Ananas Chowdhury is a professor of experimental economics at the University of Auckland. His area of interest includes looking at whether men and women perform differently when they are put on different payment schemes.
When the payment is fixed, men and women perform about the same, but when the payment is more competitive in the sense that you are actually competing with someone in order to get the higher bonus or the larger salary, then women's performance seems to become worse.
Professor Chowdhury has found that women's performance tend to become worse if there's competitive pressure. This shows that performance is related to one's competence, and women are more likely to avoid competitions, hence why women are earning less than men and are not being promoted as quickly. Research has also found that girls that went to an all-girls schools are more competitive than their counterparts.
The other thing that people are suggesting is some of this may be explained by looking at where you went to school. So girls who went to mixed-sex schools seem to avoid competition more than girls who went to single-sex schools. So it's not as if that they're getting the same pay. I don't know if that's true. What I'm saying is the girls who went to single-sex schools are not avoiding competition or competitive pressure as much as girls who went to mixed-sex schools.
This suggests that girls from the same-sex schools are more competitive, hence they are more likely to negotiate their salaries when they enter the workforce, and more chance of them having a higher paying job. New Zealand's current gender salary gap is 9.6%. Amy Feng, 9 News.
Kiwis are continuing to spend more on housing-related items, but tight budgets are also making for tough retail environments. Meanwhile, the number of self-checkouts machines in the country is set to increase by half this year, and retailers say it's something they're happy to embrace as the company case stacks up. Christy Jai has more.
The PayMart Consumer Index, covering all its electronic transactions, shows seasonally adjusted card spending increased by just 2% in August. Non-discretionary spending, including supermarkets, accounted for $1.49 billion in August, up 3.2% from July and 5.4% from a year ago. But growth is still weak in the retail sector, so it doesn't hurt that new technology is being adopted in the store to help customers feel more like they are in control. In the supermarkets business, the number of self-checkout machines is set to increase by half this year, with more advanced technology aimed at reducing queue time and tapping into the tech-savvy sentiment of consumers. Retailers say it's something they must embrace or risk losing customers to online competitors. But there are also catches.
You know, these are really sizable investments for a business. There's not just the cost of the technology itself or customising it, but there are other considerations and costs.
These include changing the layout within the store to ease traffic flow and a reallocation of staff to help with the customer experience. According to one supermarket's chain, about 1/3 of transactions already go through the self-serve checkouts, and that rate is as high as 45% in some stores. So it seems at a time when customers are calling the shots, a little adaptation is necessary. Christy Zhao, 9 News.
Food prices have gone up by 0.1% in August compared to July, but has fallen by 0.5% compared to last August. The cost of food is lower this year due to cheaper dairy products, vegetables and lamb. Amy Fong reports.
Statistics New Zealand said that the food prices has decreased by 0.5% in August this year, as vegetables, dairy products and lamb are now cheaper. Annual food prices have now fallen for 4 months in a row, and this hasn't happened since 2010. Lower prices were recorded for grocery food, which has decreased by 2.1%. Meat, poultry and fish has also decreased by 0.7%. The individual food items that has fallen the most this year were lettuce, which were down by 39%, fresh milk down by 9.2% and broccoli down by 50%. Lamb prices have reached a peak last year August, but its price has also fallen by 19%. However, some food prices has also increased this year. This includes tomatoes, which went up for 26%, fresh chicken pieces, which went up by 9.2%, and kumara has gone up by 90%. Fruit and vegetable prices are usually higher in August due to winter. This has caused an increase to the price of fruit juice and soft drink. Amy Feng, 9 News.
The risk of sudden unexplained death in infancy greatly increases when a child sleeps in the same bed with one or more adults. Health experts say the public health advice on safe infant care practices must be strengthened. Christy Zhao reports.
Cot death rates around the world are at an all-time low, with only thousands of babies affected every year. But sudden unexpected death in infancy is still the leading cause of death for babies between the age of 1 month and 1 year, and that's especially the case for Maori and Pacific Island kids. Experts say the risk is greatly increased when a child sleeps in the same bed with one or more parents.
The safest place is actually in their own cot beside the parent's bed. This has been shown in a number of studies, both in New Zealand and overseas, and seems to be very consistent that having the baby with the parent's bedroom is good, but not in the parent's bed.
Health officials recommend strengthening the public health advice about safe infant care practices, including bed sharing by adults and siblings with infants under the age of 6 months. The provision of self-contained sleeping cradles to newborn infants is also one of the suggested options. Evidence has shown that large decreases in incidence of cot death are often attributed to national risk reduction campaigns. Christy Zhao, 9 News.
Now we have our TV9 host from Asia Focus, Julie Nixon, to comment on too few women on boards.
New Zealand's most influential and connected directors are made up of a core of 17 men and women, according to new research on New Zealand's Director Network. The 17 include 5 women: Joan Withers, Susan Patterson, Tania Simpson, Alison Patterson and Elizabeth Coates. Kevin McCaffrey, a former partner at PricewaterhouseCoopers, said he undertook the research project because of a lack of understanding and clarity of the director network. This has given rise to comments like, "Business in New Zealand is run by an old boys network." McCaffrey analysed the directors on 350 New Zealand organisations to look at how clusters on boards are connected, among other things. The research revealed a core cluster of 24 boards. It turns out the board of TVNZ is a connector board between other major companies, and that Mighty River Power, a state-owned energy company due to be listed on the stock exchange next year, has a number of very well connected directors. Of the 1,428 directors, 86% sat on just one board. Only 15% acted as interlocking directors, and only 13% were female. But the research also reveals that the proportion of women increased with the number of board positions held. Of the 61 directors who sat on 3 or more boards, 25% were female. So it seems that women who are selected to be a board member for one company are subsequently invited to join other boards. Looking more closely at the 24 core boards and ranking directors on the number of boards they sat on, a list of 17 people was produced. A group of recently retired chief executives is at the centre of the network. They include Progressive Enterprises Managing Director Ted Van Arkel, former ANZ boss Sir John Anderson, and former Foodstuffs Managing Director Tony Carter. Arguably, a company in retail, for example, should have a board that reflects the diversity and demography of the market that it serves. This doesn't just mean a 50-50 split between male and female, but representation across age groups and ethnicities. Clearly this is not the case. There are too few women on New Zealand boards and too many retired accountants.
Thank you, Julian. Now let's take a short break and we'll be back shortly.